just interject something here for a moment?
Sure.
We want to apply the highest consciousness to this possible, since we're capable of that, right? And so the highest consciousness being that this is the spread of abundance for every man, woman, and child on the planet. Not just for us changing our dinars into currency for us, and even whatever else we might want to do with it. So we want to keep in our consciousness that allowing all dimensional levels, all who are involved with this, which is all one of us, right, not just humanity, to bring forth the highest good for everyone, so that it's not, even though we need to know about the details and everything, and I definitely need to know about the details because I've never been involved in this kind of stuff. We need to know the details, but let's keep in our consciousness that this is about the divine plan.
Yeah.
And it is part of the divine plan. And we want to allow the divine plan to come through us for the abundance of the whole planet. And so that whatever it takes to get this done, because one of the things I've been becoming aware of, starting to learn about this, is that there have been all kinds of people in the economics industries who have been putting a lot of effort into this restructuring of the world economy, which had to happen. And there's many, many different pieces to the restructuring of the entire world economy. This is only one piece of it. So I just wanted to put that out there because I feel us getting together as a group here tonight, as this is all in motion, is an opportunity to bring our love and our consciousness to a full intention of the highest good at the highest level for everyone on the planet.
Yeah.
And that this is part of our coming together here tonight, is to energize that highest good. Because I'm a channeler, and something that's been coming through me for a couple of years, very strongly coming through, is that the whole world economy absolutely has to change because it has been a source of slavery, basically. So it's part of the divine plan. That's all I want to say.
Thank you.
You know, you've heard me some of the things that I've shared
Yeah.
about where I am personally on this. About a year and a half ago, you know my stories that I've told you about the Dragon family in China. They were the first family of the Chinese dynasties. These people, myself personally, I think they're incarnated angels who have been storing and being guardians of this gold that's being collected for millenniums for this time. And there's documentation on that. That's not just a hearsay story around my stuff. There's actual documentation that all this stuff is there and it's real. But I had a personal experience with that about a year and a half ago when I was still living up in Edmonds, Washington. And we were a part of a group. And there was a man in Vancouver, BC, who supposedly had been designated as one of the custodians of some of this money. He met with the Dragon family. They showed him literally billions of dollars worth of bonds, U.S. Treasury bonds. When I met with him sitting in the lobby of a bank in Vancouver, BC, and he had this briefcase he always carried around with him, kept right beside him, he pulled out a $30 million U.S. Federal Treasury bond and handed it to me, and I had it in my hand and I looked at it. And I realized, this is real.
Yeah.
This is real. And
Yeah.
he knew nothing about the history of the Dragon family. He's not into the metaphysical stuff that a lot of us are into. He didn't know any of this stuff, but he came back and he says, you know, I met with this family and he says, they are old. Really, really, really old. Wrinkled faces. You know, that's what he said. He met with them face to face, one-on-one with them. If you follow the postings that come out from Puth, which is, you know, now Zap and Susan, if you know the story with them. Puth had been meeting with them for over 30 years. For over 30 years. He had to use an alias name because his life was in danger. But he would always write this stuff. And he had been writing this stuff for years and years. And it came to the point where he wrote one of his articles about 2 weeks ago. He says, it's done. It is done. The family has said that it's ready and it's done. He died 2 days later. It was like he fulfilled his life mission. And Susan is his wife, and Zap was another friend that he has to use as an alias, and they still have contacts with the Dragon family. In some of the Dinar recaps blog sites, predominantly Oki, you saw that it was about 2 weeks ago he talked about this $400 trillion that was coming. Folks, that is a drop in the bucket of what this Dragon family has. It's a drop in the bucket to what they
Pocket
have.
change, yeah.
There is no place on this planet that there is $400 trillion other than them. So here's what I think is happening. They're very, very deeply conscious people. And I think they're looking to us to say, are we going to enter into a new consciousness about money?
I think so too.
Are we going to say, all of a sudden I'm a millionaire and I can go do all these things I wanted to do, and are we going to operate in the old 3D world about money? It's about me, how much can I have, how much can I get, what kind of a house can I buy, etc., etc., etc. Or are we going to allow ourselves to enter into a consciousness of expansion? Allow ourselves to say there's no limit, there's so much more of where this comes from. It's not about me getting everything, it's about what can I do to help others. And I think they're waiting to see how we're going to react, of whether or not this is going to be $10, $12, $14 per dinar, and $2.50 per dong, because they've got unlimited money to give to us. Unlimited.
We want to come into the unity consciousness and
Yep. And it's not just us, it's basically everybody, it's everybody.
Everybody.
It's a collectiveness of all the
totally, it's a
people
collective,
that are a
absolutely.
part of this currency exchange.
Absolutely.
And this is part of the battle that's going on. You know, it's a consciousness battle that is going on.
Yeah.
Whether it's going to be double digit and $2.50 for the dong, or whether it's going to be $1.44, or whether it's Malaki who's trying to kill the whole thing, or whether it's, you know, the old cabal who doesn't want this to happen at all because it still leaves them in power and control of an old system. That's what really we're coming down to. Personally, I think that's what's creating a lot of this delay.
Yeah,
And I think, what was it? It was just last week. Who was it that wrote? It was Oki that said 5 of the elders are in Reno. The elders are that's them.
Really?
That's the Dragon family.
Really?
They are the elders.
Oh my gosh.
That's who they are. That's just another term that is used for them.
Right, right.
And it says they are there in Reno waiting to swipe their cards that releases their $400 trillion.
Oh,
They're just waiting.
right.
They're in no hurry. They've been guarding this money for centuries. They're in no hurry. A few weeks doesn't mean anything to them.
It's about consciousness.
It's about
ultimately.
consciousness.
It is.
It really
It's
is.
about consciousness ultimately. Yeah.
Well, it's a little disconcerting to hear that it's felt that the U.S. is holding it up, you know, once again, the U.S. is, you know,
Yeah. When
whatever that means, whoever, within the U.S.
Yeah, it's basically the old powers that be within the U.S. that control so much of the global currency, that control the Federal Reserve. It's the Federal Reserve families and stuff like that. So, okay.
Hey, Dave, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
so how is the US holding it up?
Well, Mountain Goat, remember, she said, she
Yeah.
was, when you go to the Dinar Recaps blog site, she says it's the U.S. that's been holding it up. And I don't think she says it's the U.S. government or all the people. I think it's those old powers that be, powers that were, is a better term I like to use. That's the ones that do not want this to happen. They're doing everything they can to try to stop it. But it's not going to. It's going to happen. I don't think it's a question of if, it's a matter of when, and it's a question of what rate. That's what's there. I think minimally we're going to see the dollar to $1.16. Minimally. There's still that debate that's going on, but we don't know. But a lot of us think it's on the higher side. So, okay, let's move on. This is really key. If all the things that are going on tonight, this is what's most important for all of us to understand. Operating as a business versus an individual. And there's 2 primary reasons. Tax savings and the protection of your assets.
I'm sorry, can I just ask a question? The previous screen, there was something about a 15% rate if it is past, if it's long term. What were you talking about?
Well, Okay, I didn't go into this. The folks at the Anderson Consultants say it's individual income. Other CPAs have said, no, it's capital gains, and I heard them quote, the IRS quotes, there is still that possibility. Capital gains, if it's short term, which means if you've held the currency for 1 year or less, it's ordinary income, it's 35%. If you've held the capital for a year or longer, it's long term, and that's 15%.
If it's considered capital gain.
If it's considered capital gains.
Okay.
And some of you have dinar that fits into both categories. You need to document that. Jerry, you do. Penny, you do. Because you had purchased some of yours more than a year ago, or when the reval takes place. You will have purchased that. Make sure you have your receipts, because you may be looking, if it's going to be taxed this way, considered capital gains, you can be looking at a difference of 20%.
That's for the tax man. You don't have to have it to go in and
No.
redeem it.
Not to redeem it,
Right,
it's for
that's
when you
right.
file your taxes, okay? Did that answer that?
Yes.
Okay. Individual, operating as a business versus an individual, the two primary reasons. Let me tell a story, let me go back to this, about the difference between an individual and a business. It all comes down to when you get to spend your money and when you pay your taxes. As an individual, if it's considered ordinary income, you are taxed first, and then you get to spend what's left over. As a business, you can take anything that is considered a part of the business expense. You get to spend the money first, and then you're taxed on what's left over. Let me use an illustration, and I'm just going to use a rounded number of $1 million. If you had $1 million, and it was ordinary income, and you operate this as just a part as an individual when you file your taxes, you're going to pay, and I'm going to use 35% for now. 35% plus 5% for state, you're right off the top, you're going to lose roughly 40%, that's $400,000. That's going to go to the taxes. You got $600,000 left over to spend. Now let's say you're set up as a business. Can you buy a car and have it a part of the company as the business? Yes. And you don't pay taxes on that. You get to spend it first. Can you buy a house and have it part of the business? Yes. And you don't pay taxes on that. You get to spend it first. You can take part of your utility bills and the list, you can take business trips that are, quote, business trips, but also vacations. You can do all kinds of stuff with your money that you would normally do as an individual, but now it's a business expense. Let's say you decided to buy a house, let's say we'll come back to the $1 million, $400,000 house. You don't pay taxes on that $400,000. And then let's say you want to buy a new car, $30,000 car. You don't pay taxes on that car. All of a sudden, can you see that you can be spending, and I'm just using this hypothetically, you can be spending up to $500,000 before you've had to pay any tax, and now you're no longer paying taxes on $1 million. And let's say you did spend $500,000, you're now paying taxes on $500,000, and 40% of that is what? $200,000. Did you see the difference? Because you spent half the money considered business expenses first, you're only taxed on half, and you just saved $200,000. You follow me on that? You understand what that is? That is the most important thing about this. Now, what each of you needs to do is get your own CPA, your own consultant, so you really know when it can be considered a business expense versus individual. It's different with every one of you because it all comes back to intent. The issue is the intent. And can you document how much of it is actual business and it's not just a cover-up? You can't do it just as a cover-up and get by with it. It comes down to intent, and you have to have documented records for those expenses to justify and show this was a legitimate business expense. But it's the tax savings. The other thing is what's called the protection of your assets. It's protecting your money from legal issues. I want to use an illustration because this is something that just happened to Diana yesterday or the day before. If you had all that money into your personal